And welcome back. This is the third part of the elevator series. For those that continue to watch these videos, I appreciate it. Any comments or questions that you may have, by all means, leave it below, and I'll try to get back to you with some form of answer. Always interested in trying to educate myself and help anyone that may have a question about what I'm doing as well. So far in the process, it's been pretty good. As I've said in previous videos, this whole process has gone by a lot faster than I anticipated. Here I'm doing a dry run or dry fit of the left elevator. There's a lot of small parts, especially around the trim motor, and there's a couple gusset pieces and whatnot that are just small 3 or 4 inch pieces of aluminum that are bent, and you have to make sure that they're bent at the correct angle when you're fitting everything together. So then once you get that done, you take the piano wire, which is what's going to hold the trim tab in place, and the piano hinge, I'm sorry, and you got to basically got to custom fit it. It's a solid piece as far as there's no holes or anything in it, so you end up creating a pilot hole, and then you cleco that to the structure or the frame of the elevator, and then you use the pre-drilled holes on the elevator to drill and match drill the holes in the piano hinge. So when you do that, there's a big discussion or a lot of opportunities for mistakes there in binding by not ensuring that the hinge is installed straight. So as you're installing it and creating drilling the holes, you want to make sure you're measuring and clamping the hinge in place so that it's straight as you go down the length of, and that's what you see me doing here with the ruler. And so just measure as you go, clamp it, measure, clamp, and just make sure that it's straight. Like I said, I've read several instances of people installing these and having to completely redo it because they did not pay close enough attention when they're making the hinge. So you go through and you see and drilling and clecoing as I'm going, just to make sure it's held in place and it doesn't move. I just finished the majority of the left hinge yesterday and tested the hinge itself, the piano hinge, and it actually fits really well. It's got a slight not a binding, but a slight you can feel a slight hesitant location, I guess, about midway through. So it's just it's not a binding or anything. It's not going to affect how it operates. You can just tell that it's got a slight rub at the mid position, which is fine. It won't be an issue for the trim motor or anything like that. No need to redo it or anything like that. I was actually fortunate and happy with the results. So going through, when you create the hinge, you also have to cut the hinge at the angle to match the inner, what I call the inner angle, or the inboard side of the elevator. And so you just want to make sure you're marking everything correctly. And there are several instances later on where you want to make sure you're using the correct half of the piano hinge with relations to the elevator and then the structure of the trim tab, just to make sure you're not about to put the wrong piece onto the wrong structure. There's a time or two where I caught myself trying to eyeball why this hinge is not looking right, and then realize I'm holding the wrong half. So some of the process of putting this together, it's some of it is easy, or most of it's easy. There's a couple parts where you really have to pay attention with the elevator. As I've said before, I figured that the elevators wouldn't be too terribly difficult. They're small. It's a simple control surface. But it's actually, as I've said before, pretty intricate and pretty involved. There's a lot of small parts, a lot of self-manufacture, I guess, and you just really have to pay attention to the instructions and look ahead and see what it really is intending for you to do. There's several instances where, as I was riveting the skins on, there are several points where it'll tell you don't rivet these 3 or these 6 places. And the reason being is at some point later on, you'll need to get inside the skins to be able to rivet the other side. And that's in a couple spots. So you really want to pay attention as you're riveting these pieces together, that you're not going ahead of yourself too much, and that you're paying attention to anything like that. And it'll tell you, rivets the top skin for the left elevator to the forward spar, with the exceptions noted in Figure 1. Whatever the case may be. And so you just have to really pay attention to make sure that you don't overlook those, because it just makes for a headache later on when you have to drill out those rivets to be able to get to the inside of the elevator. And I'm stuck kind of where I'm at now, in that, like I said, I've completed the majority of the left elevator. It's assembled up to the point where I need to put in the very aft ribs, which are the foam ribs, and I'm waiting on some blind rivets that I ordered from Vans. I forget which part it was, but there was I think it might have been on the rudder, but anyway, there's several that I had to drill out to redo and get access to a point that I didn't have, that I mistakenly closed myself out from by riveting. And so I have to wait for a new batch of blind rivets to come in to finish the right side. And it's got a warning in there when you're riveting the forward spar to the ribs on the elevators. It tells you to place a weighted board on top of it to make sure that it's straight. And then once you blind rivet the forward spar to the ribs here on the elevators, then you go in and in a specific order rivet the skins to the rib and the frames. I could probably get away with going ahead to rivet the skins and do everything except for the blind rivets, but for the very fact that it has that warning in there before you proceed, I want to make sure that I don't create a warped elevator that will cause nothing but problems. So here you see me putting on the counterbalances. The one thing, it took me a lot of research on how these actually fit with the skins. I was confused a bit. When I put primer on these, I thought that they were going to be completely covered by skins. Turns out that was wrong. And so, learning process. It's not going to be a big deal because obviously I'm going to primer and paint the whole plane anyway. But the skins sit on top of the aft and the aft 6 rivet holes of the counterbalance skins there. And there's my son again. He likes to come out and visit every once in a while. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out exactly how it's all supposed to meld together. But as you see here, you sit the skins right over the top. And yes, it creates a very slight gap between the end of the counterbalance skins and the top skin, but it's negligible and not a problem. Anyway, I'm going to let this run out here. And again, I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time.